And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're going to be talking about a game called Garden Seeds. Now this is a preview, so the copy I'm going to show you is not a final production copy, although some of the stuff is pretty close to what it's going to look like, the artwork and such. But Garden Seeds is a game in which you are, well, planting seeds in a garden and then trying to score points for them. But there is some interaction, and there's some, you roll dice and manipulate those dice as to what actions you can take each turn. That's something that I like using dice. Alien Frontiers did it. And so let's take a look at how this game works, and then we'll come back. So here's the game. It has a grid of 6x6. This is the garden that you are growing, and on the outside there's a scoring track, and each player will place a piece of their color on that scoring track to move around and keep track of their points during the course of the game. Players will also get a pile of pieces of their colors, and there's also 4 dice. But what's really important about this game are the veggies. You can see here that we have a pile of vegetables. There are 5 different vegetables. Each has a different number. And so you can see we got squash and carrots and tomatoes and artichokes and eggplant. And there's not a really big deal about what kind it is, other than each different one corresponds with a different number. These are the seeds, and then on the flip side is the actual vegetable itself. Players also have some special tiles that they might have. Each player gets 1 sun at the beginning of the game. Each player gets one of these, which is a bird or a rabbit on the other side. And they also get one of these scarecrows or sundial on the other side. And in the 2-player game, each player gets a rock. Now, back over to the board. The way this game is going to work is players are going to be rolling dice in their turn. There are 4 dice that you are going to roll. And this is what's neat about the game, is you are going to roll these dice, and depending on what numbers you roll, will show what things you can do that turn. So as you're rolling these dice, you're going to look and see what numbers you have rolled. And each die can be used for different things. So, for example, I can use any die I want to purchase a seed token. So if I use a 4, I can purchase a 4 seed token, or I can actually even purchase a 2. I just can't purchase a 5. So you can see that a 5 or a 6 is going to allow me to purchase any seed token I want. When I do that, I'm going to put the seed token in front of me, and I'm going to put one of my markers on it to show that I own that seed token. Now, you can only buy 1 seed token of each kind per turn, but you can have as many as you want in front of you. But as the game progresses, you're not going to want that many in front of you. You can also use 2 dice to place a seed token on the board, to plant a seed token. 2 dice here, for example, 3 and 6, that allows me to place this seed token either on, if you notice that there's dice on the side of the board, on the 6-3 position, so I can place it here, or on the 3-6 position, which allows me to place it here. Of course, those positions may not be open, but basically I'm using these dice to put it out in different coordinates on the board. Now, does that matter? Well, it's going to matter, and I'm going to show you why in a second. But you also notice that some of these positions here say 2 times on them. They will score double points, but they're also the ones that require you to use 2 6s, or a 6 and a 5, or a 5 and a 6. They're the best positions on the board. Another thing you can do is you can water one of your seeds. So when you do that, you simply use a die that's equal to or higher than the number of the one that you're watering, and you'll turn it over and hooray! Now it's a vegetable. Or you can do the same thing and harvest one that you have out on the board using a die, and then you will score points equal to the number on the vegetable. And you might get more points if it's on one of these double spaces. And you can also, when you put out tiles, you can also instead put out a bird or a rabbit tile. If you have a 6 die and you have your rabbit tile on the board, you can flip it to the bird side or vice versa. You can also place a rock tile, which I'm not going to talk about much more here, but just in a 2-player game you can use it to block off certain spaces. And then there's the scarecrow and the sundial tile, which you can also place out. And again, you can use a 6 to flip it from one side to another. Now, that's interesting, I guess, but what we have here, there's a couple rules to the game which really add to it. For one thing, there's the sundial tile. When you have that on the board, you can add 1 to 2 different dice, or subtract 1. So instead of this being a 2-4, I can make it a 3-5, or I can add 2 to one of the dice and make this a 2-6. So sundial could be really useful because it can modify your coordinates of where you're putting things on the board. The birds and the rabbit, when it's your turn and I roll a number, I can move, for example, if I roll a 2, I can move a rabbit 2 spaces in a straight line. And birds will eat your opponent's seeds that they come across, and rabbits will eat your opponent's vegetables. And when you eat them, you can basically chuck it at and remove it from the game, or you can even steal it using another die. When you chuck it from the game, though, you have to put another token on your bird and rabbit, and that could actually, tie up your tokens so you can't use them for other places, but you can always use 3 of your dice to pull one of these rabbits or birds off the board. Now, remember the other side of the sundial is the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow has 2 uses. It protects all the tiles that are around it from the bird and the rabbit, but also when you score a tile that's around it, you will get 3 bonus points. So you realize, at first you'll think, oh, sundial is better because it adds to your dice that you're putting out on the board, but the Scarecrow, he can give you more bonus points and protect you from those annoying rabbits. But there's also one more thing. Oh, and I guess I should mention the sun tile here, which you can discard anytime you want to either re-roll all the dice or to change one of the die to anything of your choice. But if you don't use it at the end of the game, you'll get 5 bonus points. But as the game progresses, there's going to be different seeds that are out here. And so let's put some seeds out. And each of these seeds is going to have different players' colors controlling them. Let's say this is the setup here. And the blue guy decides to water his plant, so he does so. He then will check all the ones that are next to him, and if those numbers are lower than that 5, they also will get watered. Basically, it's a chain reaction. The excess water is watering them, and then he'll look. That 4 is not less than those, but this 1 is less than the 3 here, so this one also gets watered. And the blue player is going to get a point for each opponent that he waters, but at the same time, the opponents are happy because, hey, the blue guy just used an action of his to water one of their plants. So while these lower vegetables don't initially get you many points, like this one, at the same time it's pretty easy for them to get watered because if they're next to anything on the board. The same thing happens when harvesting. If this green player decides to harvest the red tomato, then this yellow will also be harvested. These ones won't be harvested because they are not less than the number on a tomato, which is a 3. So placement on the board is important because you're trying to place near the other players or place near higher things. And that is basically the way the game works. Now, when the game ends, you are going to look at all the tiles that you've collected, and you're trying to get a whole set of vegetables because that will give you bonus points. Also, the more you get of specific types, like let's say you get 5 squash, you're also going to get bonus points for that. And then all those seed tiles that you've got, but you never put them on the board, you just got a lot of seed tokens because you thought that was fun, you can keep one of those. But if you have more than one in front of you, let's say at the end of the game I have 2 tomatoes a tomato and 2 squashes in front of me, this one doesn't count against me, but each of these is going to lose me 5 points. You can have one at the end of the game with no penalty, but after that you'll lose points. So you lose points for those, you get bonus points for sets of different ones or the same at the end of the game of vegetables that you've harvested. And then remember also you get 5 points if you haven't used your sun tile. The person with the most points is the winner of the game. So there you go. That's how the game operates, and you can see how you're getting different points so that you have different options. Now, when I first initially got it, I looked at it and I said, okay, well, obviously it's good to roll high. And it is good to roll high. The problem is when you roll high, you have to then make the tougher choices. But getting those lower seeds isn't necessarily a bad thing because you can get a whole pile of the 1 seeds and they're easier to get on the board, they're easier to put out. When you put a lower seed next to other people's plants, you can get them to water them and harvest them. And that's a very interesting aspect of the game, is setting things up so that other players are using their actions to give you points. And you have to figure out how to stop that. The birds or the animals running around, and that's an interesting aspect. The game actually has a variant where you can take that out if you want to play a friendlier game. And I can see some people wanting to play that friendlier game, but I liked it because someone's getting those good die rolls. Really? You're gonna score well there? You know what? I'm gonna take that from you. and just the different aspects of, or when they get out your special tiles, should you put them out as soon as possible? And I had a big struggle between that sundial and the Scarecrow. I mean, that Scarecrow stops the opponent's animals, but that sundial lets you manipulate the dice, and I'm a huge fan of manipulating dice. So there's some interesting ideas here. If you're interested in kickstarting this one, we're about to show you a link. You can go and get involved there. But hopefully this is giving you an overview so you can decide whether this is a game that you want to support or not.